Oh, I'm starting. Hi, my name is Ibtihaj Muhammad. Thank you so much for coming. I see so many familiar faces. Very appreciative of this moment, and I'm happy to share it with everyone today. I'm going to read a few paragraphs from my book. Mohammed, her voice trailed off. The substitute teacher, Miss Winter, squinted and brought the list of names on the attendance sheet closer to her face. She was stuck, and I could guess why. She was looking at the 7 letters in my first name and wondering how to pronounce it. Is your last name Mohammed? She asked. Her eyes fixed on me, the only 4th grader in the classroom wearing a hijab, who happened to be sitting in the front row. Yes, I nodded. My eyes stayed glued in front of me. And how do you pronounce your first name, young lady? She asked. It's Ibtihaj, I said, pronouncing each syllable as slowly as possible. It's pronounced just like it's written, I added. That usually helped people understand how to say my name, but it didn't help Miss Winter. She made another face, the kind you make when your mouth lands on something bitter. Oh, that's too hard, she said, shaking her head no and scribbling something down on the attendance sheet. We're going to call you Ibti.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that reading. I'm so excited about this book in the world. I mean, I was really excited about you being in the world when I first started following you as an athlete. And then when I found out you had written Proud, which is a phenomenal book.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was excited that your story was going to get into the world. And just looking around this room is so beautiful to me, and being able to see this diverse room, to see so many people in hijab, so many people who I think you have changed the narrative for as an athlete, as an academic, as an activist. And so I wanted to start by talking to you about your activism. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Strand. I'm Jacqueline Woodson, and I'm glad you're here. And back to my question. In terms of being an athlete and being an activist, what came first and how?
Well, in some ways, I feel like as an African American, I was born an activist. There's so many parts of my childhood that I feel like my parents reminded us to be conscious of where we came from, our lineage, and always to be proud of that. And then you also have on the other hand, I mean, I grew up with, a ball in my hand in a sense where we weren't really given the option of whether or not to play sport. It was more so of which sport do you want to play? And we were always really encouraged to be active. When I was a kid, we stayed outside till the street lights came on. So there was this importance put on not just being active, but also, being healthy in a sense.
And so in that, how did you find fencing?
We was playing all these different sports as a kid, and we had a really hard time finding long sleeve tops and spandex to go underneath team uniforms. And I remember from a really early age spending a lot of time in models with my mom being like, no, that doesn't match, or no, that doesn't fit. And we happened to be at a stoplight in my hometown in Maplewood, New Jersey, and we saw fencing in the local high school. And at the time, we weren't familiar with the sport, but we saw that the athletes had on long jackets and long pants. So my mom's like, I don't know what it is, but I want you to try it out. And that's how.
So great.
Yeah, that's how I started fencing. My mom signed me up for a lesson. She, is so resourceful. She found this fencing club, which really turned out not to be a club. It was this guy's garage. And he was the maestro, or the premier coach in our town. And my dad took me to my first lesson, and we came home. My dad was like, no, we're not doing this. Because it was just far and it was weird. There was this random guy in a garage teaching me how to fence. My dad was like, absolutely not. But I, also being resourceful, like my mom, went online and I Googled the top 10 schools in the country, and they all had fencing teams. I'm from a really large family. I'm one of 5 kids. As you'll read in the book, my dad's a retired drug detective. My mom's a retired teacher. I had to be resourceful with how to pay for school. So I saw the top 10 schools had fencing teams, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. So it was just really a means to an end in the beginning.
Wow. And did you come to love it?
I'm not sure if I've ever loved fencing. I don't know. I get that question a lot, and I can't say that I've ever loved it. Mm-hmm. There are parts about the sport that I've grown an affinity for, and for me, I've always been really drawn to the people. I was, head over heels for my high school fencing team. It was this space where we were winning all the time, and it's easy to be happy when you're winning. We had ups the entire time I was on the team. We won almost every state championship. It was just this really good energy. Everyone was really supportive, whether you were on the strip actually providing tangible wins for the team, or you were a cheerleader, you were on the sidelines. Like my first few years, I was just cheering my teammates on. But either way, it was just this really supportive, inclusive environment. Mm-hmm. And then after high school, or at some point in high school, I discovered a nonprofit I fenced for in New York City, the Peter Westbrook Foundation, which really has become more family than it has anything. And a lot of that has to do with just the nurturing environment it has created. Mm-hmm. I discovered the foundation at 16. Someone told me that there were Black people who fenced here in New York City. And I was like, that's offensive. But I Googled it and found them. And that's how I joined the Peter Westbrook Foundation. It was really out of necessity. I feel like I needed to be around people who look like me in order to grow in the sport. It's hard to have that sensation of being ostracized and being labeled as different day in and day out.
So thank you. So as you know, both my kids are fencers. My son's 10 and my daughter, who's here, is 16. And it's very rare in their fencing clubs to see kids of color fencing. And I know one thing you talk about in the book is when you get to the U.S. team and people think you kind of slid in. And anyone who knows about fencing knows it's a very intellectual sport as well as physical sport. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about that experience and about making the team, your feelings about making the Olympic team, and what you went in with and what you came away with.
So I qualified for my first team in 2010, I believe. When I graduated from college, I graduated from Duke in 2007, I had a hard time finding a job, and at the same time, I was still part of the Westbrook Foundation. So I was training, and I somehow or another convinced my parents to help me pay for a World Cup. And I remember taking a good look at Team USA, the USA fencing team, and to me it wasn't diverse enough, and that I didn't see someone who looked like me. And even with the women's saber team, there had never been a woman of color on the team before. So, I was going against what everyone around me was telling me. I was 23 when I went to my first international competition. Wow. I had no world ranking. I had no national ranking. I had never had a senior competition before I graduated from college. So there were a lot of naysayers around me telling me what was impossible, that an Olympic team wasn't in my future because I had never been on a cadet or junior team, that I don't have the tactical training or skills to ever make a national team or qualify for an Olympic team. So I feel like my journey as an athlete is kind of about challenging what the people around me think about me. And I feel like society tries to put you in a box, even within the fencing community. There's this idea that people who excel as kids are thought of as, Olympic hopefuls and people who don't have a spot on these cadet and, junior teams, they're the ones that won't make it, that they'll fall off, that they don't have the skill set to make it. And there's also that layer of, I don't know exactly what to call it, but to be different in a sport that is predominantly white is very difficult. There's a lot of pushback in even wanting you to occupy that space. So on the national team, there was a lot of commentary around the team that never included me, even while I was on the team. I was seen more as a placeholder than I was anything else. And there was almost this like hopeful rhetoric that somehow I would not qualify the next year. So imagine having to carry that baggage every single competition, every single year, and compete. And I think that a lot of athletes of color who are in similar situations as I was experience that, where you feel that pressure to be exceptional in order to be accepted.
So, and similar stuff happened at Duke in terms of that, trying to occupy that space and getting the pushback. So what would you say to young people who are athletes now, especially young girls who maybe maybe are feeling lesser than, or that they're getting pigeonholed in some sort of way?
Yeah. I think if there's something to be said to be strong and to be confident in yourself and not rely on people around you to encourage you and motivate you. I know for a really long time I felt like I needed my sister and I needed my mom in every single moment that I was sad, or I felt these struggles, especially while on Team USA. And at some point I started to rely on myself. I know I didn't allow these negative words that were coming from the national coach or coming from teammates, some of my training partners, to affect how I felt about myself. And that was a conscious effort. I had to consciously tell myself, which I call like Muhammad Ali mantras, that like, I'm amazing, yes, I'm great, magic, I can do this, you're gonna win this, you got it. And it was on the strip, it was off the strip, it was in competition, out of competition. And this wasn't something that I said out loud. I was just feeding myself this kind of energy all the time because I felt like I constantly had to contradict the things that I was hearing around me. And I didn't want it to even subconsciously affect how I felt about myself.
So smart. I don't know if anyone has gone online and seen you fence, but if you haven't, you must, because you're magic. You completely defy gravity. You're beautiful. It's just.
Why are you so nice?
Am I lying? I would make my poor daughter watch these videos and I'd be screaming because I'm like, oh, you have to learn that move. How did she just do that?
You are the best fencing mom. I like live for this. It's really funny. When I came home from the Olympics, I had people who I don't know, who knew nothing about fencing, who watched the Olympic Games and asked me about the commentary that they heard at the Olympic Games, and would ask, like, what was that guy's problem? What didn't he like about your fencing? What didn't he like about you? And I know the guy who commentated the Olympic Games, and I've never got good vibes from him, but it's so funny that you say you love to watch me fence. And I felt like throughout my career, I've kind of combated this notion that as a black athlete, all I can bring to the table is strength. I don't know how to fence tactically. That one of my strongest things as an athlete is my sense of timing. And I've been told, oh, all your points are lucky. That's something that I heard throughout my career, is that somehow I've been riding this wave of luck. And I tell you, to be black in fencing, to be a Muslim woman in hijab, and to not only go to the Olympics for Team USA, but to medal, there's nothing lucky about that.
Oh my God. So true. It is so true. Do you want to talk about writing?
Yes.
Let's talk about the writing process. At what point did you decide you were going to write Proud, and what was it like?
So, to be honest, I never thought about writing a book. When the idea kind of came about to tell my story, I was like, wait a second, this has to happen, right? Because I think that if I was a kid and I had read a story of like struggle and triumph and all these obstacles and saw that it's possible to come out on top with hard work, I think that it would have changed the way that I saw myself and perceived my future. So I felt like it was necessary, especially now in this moment. But I also didn't realize it was going to be so hard. Like, I wish someone had told me how difficult it would have been. I felt like Lori Tarps, who helped me write the book, she's awesome. And in some, it felt so therapeutic to talk to her and to talk through my story and to unpack all these moments throughout my career that I think they've happened and they feel like kind of blips on the radar. So there are these speed bumps and hurdles and mountains that you have to climb. And, you know, through having a strong faith and believing in my purpose and having faith in God, I know that I've been able to overcome things that I've seen a lot of people not make it out of, especially in this sport as people of color and as religious minorities. But to be honest, I didn't know it would be so hard to write a book. I don't know why I thought writing 300 pages would be easy, but it was definitely really difficult. But to me, it felt so timely. Like everything about my journey felt timely, even from the time I qualified for the team. This was all around this discussion of like zero tolerance, Muslim ban, these videos being released of like police brutality, like Black people losing their lives, and to just challenge all of these things with existing as myself, right? To challenge these misconceptions that people have about people who look like me, and to dispel these different stereotypes and change the narrative. It just felt very timely to write it.
It is so timely. I think I'm going to ask 3 more questions before we open it up for the audience, because I feel like I'm hogging you. I think about the Black community and mental health a lot, and the kind of stigma that we have around it. That a lot, you know, I think also working class, poor white communities have it as well. And I remember being in college, and my sport was track, and we would get to our competitions and we'd be throwing up and everyone's sick and, you know, literally losing it. And when I read about you and the team and actually getting someone who you could talk to, I thought about what a difference that would have made for me as a young person, because therapy was just not even on the radar. I was like, you go to the track meet, you get sick, you win or you lose, right? And you repeat it again the next day or the next week. But let's talk about mental health and the fatigue you felt, because it sounded like the fatigue was a reaction, and also a reaction to being so tired of having to do so much more work than the other athletes, not only around the sport, but around race and identity and all of that.
Yeah. So I was experiencing this paralyzing fatigue that I didn't even know exactly what that meant. All I knew is when it was go time, I had spent hours and hours, you know, almost 24 hours trying to get to this World Cup after training for the last few months and preparing for this World Cup. I would get there, and the morning of, I would wake up after going to sleep relatively early, having a great, you know, eating well, getting good night's sleep. I would wake up really tired, and I would get to the fencing hall, to the venue, and I would be so tired, and I couldn't explain this fatigue. I couldn't understand why when I got on the strip, my feet felt like lead, and I couldn't move. I couldn't lunge. I couldn't do anything, and I was losing in the first round. And this isn't, you know, like baby Ibti trying to make the national team. This is like, you know, number 6, 7 in the world, and I couldn't figure out why I'm going out in the first round of competition. And it just so happened that I don't remember why we had a team psychologist all of a sudden. I know that I personally was just dealing with a lot. We had just won world championships, and that felt like a lot of pressure. So it's like, oh, world champions on the strip all of a sudden, you know, and our team was having issues, and whenever we lost, it was always my fault, believe it or not, according to the coach anyway. He was like, Ibti, why did we lose? So I felt like I felt the pressure, and I was being, I was succumbing to that pressure mentally. And in talking to this sports psychologist, she helped me kind of talk myself off the ledge. And I remember having conversations with no one else other than my sister and my mom about the sadness that I was feeling. And it wasn't just in fencing. I was feeling this like overwhelming sadness, and I couldn't explain it. And like, I love my parents so much, but my parents were trying to say, like, you just got to pray more. You got to pray. And I know a lot of Muslims in the room can attest to this. There's this, like, if you pray on time, this won't happen to you. And for me, it wasn't as simple as, just praying more. There's something to be said for, like you said, addressing sadness and depression and anxiety within not just the Muslim community, the Black community. There's stigma around these mental issues that, for whatever reason, we don't discuss them. And for me, I didn't even know that I needed to ask for help. My asking for help was like, Mom, what do I do? Because everybody's mom is a doctor, right? So it's like, Mom, what do I do? And my mom was like, you got to pray. And I'm like, okay, that's not it, Mom, But thankfully, the sports psychologist was there, and she helped me figure out, and it's trial and error. And imagine having to, go to local competitions, to fence with kids, to try to work your way and iron out these creases of anxiety. I literally had to figure it out. And so much of my life changed when not just I started to go through these Muhammad Ali mantras on the strip. I was always reciting like verses from the Quran that like immediately I felt like slowed down this heavy breathing that I was experiencing, and almost felt like a panic attack. But then also I would, I kind of chose happiness. I decided I was no longer going to allow my teammates and my coaches to dictate how I felt about myself. And that was something that I did not get from the sports psychologist. I feel like I just, thank God, arrived at this, I had this epiphany, and I arrived at this moment in my life when I was like, I feel like I took control of my emotions. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to give you that power to make me feel inadequate as an athlete, to feel inadequate as a person. I was like, I'm not going to give you that power over me. And I just made this conscious decision. I was like, you know what? I'm happy. And that kills people who don't like you. They hate that. Yeah.
It is so, I know it is so the best ammunition for haters. So two last questions. Talk about visiting the border in California. I know that was early July.
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, I went with Revolve Impact and a nonprofit that I co-founded called Athletes for Impact. And we went to the border. It was, this mission to try to understand what's going on. And like all of us, we're confused, we're horrified, and then you're also like, okay, what can I do to help? And for me, the best way to understand what was going on was to see it firsthand, and that came in the form of visiting the U.S. Mexico border, which I've been to before. It's kind of bizarre to see, right? Because there's two fences. There's the Mexican fence, there's the U.S. fence, and there's a space in between that's federal property. And in this federal property, you have I think it's called Friendship Park, where 10 or 20 people, something like that, from either side, U.S. or Mexico side, they can go visit their family members for a few minutes. And it's just kind of interesting to see this huge, these huge, massive walls, right, that are there. And I've seen them years ago. So when I hear about we need to build a wall, I'm like, well, how high is it going if it's already there, But then to also learn about who is being detained, who's being, separated. And I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about what's going on. I think that most of us, when we think about the families that are being separated, we think of Latinos in particular. And there are so many Caribbeans. There's so many Black people who are also experiencing the same thing. There are a lot of nonprofits that I met with when I was there. There was a nonprofit that predominantly deals with Somali immigrants. There was one that deals with Haitian immigrants. To hear about the way Haitians get to the United States via the U.S. border is to take a boat from Haiti to Brazil and to walk 4 to 5 months from Brazil all the way up to the Mexico border.
Wow.
So it's heart-wrenching to understand the lengths that people go to risk their lives to flee, domestic violence, to flee state violence, to flee wars, to seek a better life. And for us to turn people away or to, rip people's children from their arms for them to never see them again is heartbreaking. And I think what each of us can do is try to learn more and see what we can do, and also vote. That's something simple that everybody can do.
Yes. Thank you. I was going to ask what we can do, and you answered it. So I think now we can ask the audience if they have any questions, but you're phenomenal. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Jacqueline.
you. Thank you. So here's a microphone coming around. We have a question right here up front. And if you could just tell us your name, then ask you.
I'm sorry. Good evening. A little nervous. My name is Gail Davis Carter, and we are UN partners. And I have to tell you, I just love you.
Oh, thank you.
Because you're so straightforward, and I'm a fellow December baby too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we are straightforward. But what I loved about what you shared about is the differences of people that are still the same. And when I have two questions. When you went to the border, okay, because I noticed that there were people who, two people who flew the entire wall of the border in Mexico. And there are some places where there's no wall and broken fences, and you can just kind of walk through the pond over across from each other. Did you experience any of that? And did you experience what people are dealing with right there on site as you were watching it unfold? And then the second thing is, being a woman of color and fencing and doing the work that you're doing, what has been your biggest challenge to overcome stereotypically?
I'm just, can everyone hear the questions in the back? Okay.
Yeah. The biggest challenge to overcome, like a
Stereotypical question that people stereotype every culture.
Right.
What has been one that you've had to overcome, like your biggest challenge in overcoming that?
I'm not sure what a stereotypical challenge would be, but I know that there was some point in my career where I just made this decision that I'm not going to continue to explain myself or feel the pressure to do that. I think that that's a burden placed on a lot of minorities to somehow or another try to make yourself more acceptable in some way, to say like, hey, we're the same, we're so much alike. And I feel like when I was younger, my earlier moments on Team USA, I kind of felt that like there's a sensation, or this feeling that my teammates feel that I'm different from them. So let me try to help, ease them into dealing with a Muslim, or show them that like black women aren't super aggressive, all these stereotypes that people have about us. And like, let me, try to help them interact with people who look like me in a more meaningful and normal way, as opposed to them thinking of me as other. And like, I can't even tell you the things that people have said to me. And these are people who I've been on teams with for years. So not one team, not two teams, for like 8 teams, right? To ask me, hey, what country are your parents from? It's like, we've known each other for forever, and we fenced together on Team USA. Like, where would they be from, right? But, to ask someone like, in the middle of a team dinner, like, do you have your magic carpet to go pray? Like, things like that to me are like the crazy experiences that I've had. And at some point, I went through phases where I feel like I tried to, it was like I want to be accepted by them because they're teammates. And for me, when you make the team, it's going to be like, we're in this together, we're going to win together, and you're looking for that inclusive space. But as you know, fencing is individual first, and then it's a team. So there are very few spots to qualify for Team USA. And when I tell you it is a dog-eat-dog environment to get there are people who literally hope that you have broken your foot to get there. You know what I mean? So that they can pass you. And that's the energy that I felt for 8 years straight. Yeah, so I went to the border. I don't even remember the name of the city, but it literally is where the ocean, like you see the ocean, you see the fence kind of trail off for like a 1/4 mile into the ocean. So I didn't I didn't come across any part of the fence that was broken or there's like an interruption in the fence. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Like myself.
Good to see you. Good to be here. I have a question for you about interactions that you may have had with other Muslim athletes from around the world or from the States in the course of your journey, and what takeaways you got from that, or was there any comfort or positive energy that came from that, or was there still competition? And I'm just curious how that might have been for you.
I think that I fenced other Muslim fencers like only at World Championships when people from maybe the smaller countries or countries that don't have the larger delegations, like maybe Egypt or Tunisia, show up. There's a sense of sisterhood or brotherhood or unity when there's a Muslim athlete or a black athlete. I can tell you that. Like, all of the black Team USA fencers are friends with all of the black French fencers. There's like this unspoken, like, we're kind of related, we hope that we are, but we're not, energy that you feel when it comes to black athletes in fencing. Just aside from us all being, like one of few on our team, there's that sense of friendship. One French fencer that I'm really close to is Muslim. She's half Algerian, and she's also black. And we've been friends. When I first met her, she didn't speak any English. Now she speaks like 3 words, but we've been friends, or 3 words of English. We've been friends for years, and it literally is just because we have this sense of friendship, but also this kind of family sisterhood that stems from both having, like Arabic last names, both having, Muslim family, and also being the only 2 black girls fencing in a 200-person tournament. I don't know about other sports. I have friends who like run track or play in the NFL or NBA. That's different because, the disparity isn't there like it is in fencing. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Edith Richards. I'm a single parent, and I believe my children attended the Peter Westbrook Foundation with you. Dallas Richards, and my daughter's not here. So I just wanted to say that Peter Westbrook was like the surrogate father that I needed, and all the Olympic teachers, and it helped me to raise my children. I like that you mentioned mental health. I'm a social worker. Have you ever thought about starting programs in schools, fencing programs, and then having maybe a mental health piece?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I agree with you that Peter does become like a father figure for a lot of kids at the foundation, and it's really nice to hear that helped you as a single parent. I know what it was like for me to see like Olympic athletes and Olympic medalists who were of the same skin complexion for the first time at the Westbrook Foundation, and how transformative that was for my mind. I do have like one of my sisters who's actually sitting directly behind you, Faiza. Hey, Faiza. She's actually, her and her husband have talked about this, but hopefully in the future, we hope, inshallah, to start some type of sports programming, not necessarily specifically around fencing, but to help serve the communities in ways that include, outlets for, speaking with social workers even. I think that's really important.
Hi. My question speaks to the idea of being a Muslim woman in an area that you don't see a lot of Muslim women in. I'm not an athlete, but I'm going into academia, and specifically like the world of politics, and that can be a scary place, especially under this administration for a Muslim woman. So what would be your biggest takeaway or nugget of advice for someone?
Not to be afraid of being yourself and existing as you are. I think that there's something to be said for those of us who have courage in moments like this, and not feel, fear, and feel like we have to change parts of ourselves to conform to an administration like this that is bigoted and racist and doesn't want people like us to exist in these spaces. So I think the best form of resistance is to be unapologetic about who you are and not feel pressure to change parts of yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Noor. You're my biggest inspiration, and I want to know what inspires you.
You do.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is, do you have advice for young hijabis that want to go to the Olympics in the future?
Yes. Advice for young hijabis who want to go to the Olympics in the future, I would say to continue to work hard. I've actually fenced with Race's older brothers out here. He's one of my training partners. But there are so many hours in the gym that, I'm the only one there. I have my sister, my teammates can attest to that, where you're the first one in the gym and the last one to leave. And people don't get it. They're not meant to understand your journey. But I think if you have a goal in mind and you work hard, you believe you can accomplish it, you can make it happen. Yeah.
Another young person.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Daisy, and how did you feel when Barbie asked you to be the first Muslim Barbie?
The most important question of the night. I self-proclaimed Queen of Barbie from the time I was a kid. I played with Barbies for the longest, like in a very uncomfortably long time. I was like 15 when I stopped playing with Barbie. I had a 3-story dollhouse. We had a pool on the roof. We had a Corvette, a Jeep. Do you guys have a Corvette or a Jeep? No, but my Barbie did, okay? My parents only bought us black and brown dolls, so if we went down the toy aisle and we already had, I don't even remember their names. If we already had those 2 brown dolls, we didn't get a doll that day. And that was their effort for us to see ourselves represented, even in something as simple as doll play. But for me to become Barbie, or to have a Barbie made in my likeness, I feel like my life has come full circle because I can't even tell you how much I love Barbie. It's coming out really soon. I feel like I get that question all the time, sooner than you think. So that's all I can say. But the packaging, amazing. Okay.
Can't wait. Yeah. There was one in the way, way back. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Summer, and I'm so happy to be here. We're coming all the way from Los Angeles. Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Summer, and we're here from Los Angeles. I'm here with my 2 daughters, and my question is twofold, and it kind of piggybacks on one of the other young ladies' questions. And I'm wondering, who were the most influential people in your life when you were growing up, and who do you consider to be the most influential now that you're a young woman?
I feel like I have so many different people in my life who helped me believe that I could arrive at this moment in time, that have planted the seed, but that also watered it to help it grow to what it is today. When I think of athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Hakeem Olajuwon, I remember as a kid thinking, like, how are they playing and fasting? Like, that doesn't make sense. I could barely make it to lunchtime, right? I thought I was dying. But to see these athletes, right, and to see how they could compete at the highest level of sport and fast, to see athletes like Serena and Venus Williams, right, to be unapologetic about who they were as Black athletes in the tennis world. For me, there were so many parallels to my career as a fencer. And I feel like it wasn't something I could necessarily directly relate to because I was, not even a blip on a map in fencing when they were really starting to ascend within the sport of tennis. I think that watching them allowed me to unconsciously graph my aspirations as an athlete. And I've always I want this generation to see a Muslim athlete be successful. I want our generation to continue to see Black athletes do really well and transcend sport in a way that allows them to be inspired, allows them to see themselves in spaces where even now in 2018, we're being pushed out and told, you're not welcome. This isn't a place for you. And there's there's that idea that it's just like, I'm not waiting for a seat at the table. I'm not waiting for someone else to say, hey, come on, we want this space to be inclusive. I don't need anyone to do that. I'm pulling up a chair and I'm taking a seat and I'm saying, hi, I'm Ibtihaj, you know?
Salam alaikum. My name is Maimuna. My question for you is, during your fencing career, did your fencing or just doing sports ever impact or inspire you to come closer to your faith?
Yeah, I feel like when I didn't qualify for the Olympic team in 2012, which a lot of people don't know, didn't qualify in 2012, I feel like no one really wanted to talk with me about it, especially in my family. It was like, yikes, she didn't make it, you know? And for me, I felt like I didn't make it because it wasn't meant for me to make, right? I always feel like things that are meant for me, like the way God has it written is the way that it's supposed to happen. So if it wasn't meant for me, it would miss me. So I'm like, okay, I didn't qualify, that's okay. But I think what helped me continue in the sport and not to be truly affected by not qualifying for such a this huge sporting event, the Olympic Games, arguably the most important sporting tournament, is my faith. I have teammates who, in my opinion, weren't as lucky, who still to this day have a really hard time accepting defeat and not making teams and feeling really affected by that. And I believe that my faith has allowed me to become a greater athlete because I don't hang on a loss the same way my teammates do. And I don't think that that makes me any less competitive than any of the world's top athletes. I think that my understanding of defeat is, in a sense, is that it's temporary. And our life is fleeting. So I can't get so caught up in something as simple as a loss, because I know that as an athlete, I can go back to the gym, I can continue to train in hopes of, performing better the next competition. But there are people out there who, things are way more important than sport, in a sense, where people are fighting for their lives. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. They don't have access to clean drinking water. To me, those are things that would be more hurtful, and dire than losing a match or not qualifying for an Olympic team.
So funny because we're trying to teach our children about perspective.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Saddam. I have a question. What do you say to the people that try to put you down in your career?
I have a game plan. Everybody should take out a pen. This is my plan, right? So I don't listen to haters in any capacity. Mm-hmm. I have so many trolls on social media, and I'm such a big fan of blocking and deleting. Yeah. So I have reporters and people say, man, you have the most positive social channels. Everyone's so supportive. And I know it's because I've deleted everybody. I've blocked everybody. Mm-hmm. So my trolls are constantly making new accounts because I am really quick. Me and my sister, we go through my comments so fast. I don't even see the hater comments, and not necessarily for me, but also for the young kids that read them. I don't think anyone needs to read those comments that are meant to be hurtful and spiteful.
We have time for one more question.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Aisatu, and I have a question. Well, more like a statement also. I have experience where people judge me based on me being outspoken and friendly and stuff, that I don't behave or act like a Muslim. And I was wondering, how do you recommend I respond to that? Because I don't want to sometimes, react in a badly manner, but also it's quite offensive. It's like telling someone, how is a Muslim woman expected to behave,
What do you think?
So are you getting these comments from fellow Muslims or people who are saying you're not representing Muslims in a positive light?
Well, mostly, yes, I would say sometimes, but not most of the time from Muslims. Basically, people from work or school or, just out in the street, people would hear me speak in a way and they will make the comment, you know? And I just wanted to know, how should I react to it, you know?
You know, so the thing I always think about is Chimanda's TED Talk, the single story, how people think there's a single story for, you know, the Mexican dishwasher or the black domestic or the, you know, different people. We're many stories, right? There are many layers to us, and there's not a single way. I mean, you're different from you, from me, and I don't think there's a single way to be. I don't. But at the same time, of course, I think people have an expectation based sometimes on stereotype and refuse to see people as their individual selves. So I think what we've been talking about most of the night is the importance of being who you are, and respect, having a deep respect for that, right? And I always tell my kids, you know, when you go outside, you're ambassadors for, you know, you're ambassadors for the Whitson Widoff family, you're ambassadors for the black community. There are all these ways in which who you walk out into the world is going to be judged by many, so what does that look like? So I think it's a complicated narrative, and at the same time, it's one people do have an idea of who we're supposed to be that we might not necessarily be. Does that make sense?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's something that I carry with me every day. I always feel like an ambassador for the black community and everything that I do. I feel like an ambassador for the Muslim community, especially because I wear hijab. I feel that pressure all the time. And not just because I'm a public figure, but because I feel like my faith reminds me of the way that in my mind I would like to behave. And also I feel like I have a long legacy of people that I need to, that I would like to live up to. And at the same time, like Jacqueline said, I think it's most important that you feel comfortable with yourself.
Thank you.